not part of that kind of a part of a globalized society, a globalized economy, or a globalized world, which we are now. So this is despite a massive mandate, despite Mrs. Gandhi's victory in Bangladesh, which was outstanding leadership she provided there, outstanding leadership, and we won the war. Despite that, 75, she could not govern without emergency. And the first election, the people defeated her in the North India, certainly. Because North India suffered the most under emergency. As you cross the Himalayas, Vindhyas, it got diluted, so they didn't have the impact. So she got 153 seats south of Vindhyas, and one seat, Jagjivan Ram's seat, they won in the north, that is Sasaram. Despite 349 seats, the mandate had disappeared. She couldn't win her own seat, nor her son, who was a big force that time, the neighboring seat. Both mother and son lost. The people realized the arrogance of power at that time, and they thought that Mrs. Gandhi and her son are using power for their benefit and not for the people of India. We voted for them. The poor of the North India who voted for her in 71 elections did not vote for her 77 elections. Because Parliament's life has extended, this was totally illegitimate Parliament. Then what use is that? Now that lesson is not being learned, and if you are doing things according to your manmani, or simply because somebody A has said, that party has decided, or a resolution has been passed by some people, which violates the fundamentals of democracy and the rule of law, the results are not going to be necessarily in your favor. The arrogance involved with the attack on rule of law or democratic right of the people or the Constitution are not necessarily is going to be producing results for the rulers. I think that kind of note of warning what should certainly sound for any one ruler who thinks he wants to go beyond the Constitution. Now, if you are discussing restore the confidence of the people, then judiciary also has to ensure that people are with the judiciary. The health of these three institutions is very important: Parliament, executive, judiciary, political parties, and the press. These are the public institutions which govern, which have impact on the governance of the country. If one institution, executive, tries to dominate on Parliament or weaken it and refuses to be accountable to the judiciary for its misdemeanors or violation of the law or violation of the Constitution or cutting corner of the constitutions to get away with their wish, because how to get away? Look past the money bill, for instance, in Parliament. You declare every law, it's a money bill, because Consolidated of India, you spend some money for enforcement of that law. So it's a money bill. So Rajya Sabha, where they're in minority, you await that second chamber to try to make it irrelevant because the government is not in majority. Now what will you do? That money bill becomes non-money bill the moment you come to power next year in the Rajya Sabha. What kind of face you will have for the previous laws? So the Constitution executive must respect the wishes of Parliament under the Constitution, and Parliament and executive both are ultimately to respect the Constitution, which has to be interpreted by the Supreme Court. I can say that because Supreme Court is the watchdog, as it was mentioned earlier. Actually, media itself also the watchdog, and we have to watchdog for all the institutions, Parliament, judiciary. Also, we have the right to comment when it goes astray. Because if we don't perform our duty as newsmen, which we did that in 3 cases particularly, in cases like where the justice was being miscarried, The famous case is Priyadarshini Mattu case and other cases at that time. I don't want to go into the details, but unless media had made its noise, and still I can't see how does miscarriage of justice took place and a BMW car which killed 6 people on Lodhi Road became, at the end of the day, the trial became a truck which killed the people. This is total miscarriage of justice. But Supreme Court and High Courts, they reversed the previous judgments. They had the decency to reverse. That credit should go, and the guilty was punished. Of course, the BMW case, only 2 years were left where some punishment was given. But there was a sad thing it happened. Now, for Supreme Court, fundamental duty is to protect the constitutions on behalf of the people. They have been I'm a little partial to the judiciary because Kachari is the last hope of the people. And I believe in the independence of the judiciary. That's my inherent belief. And second reason, that is more professional, more as a professional than citizen also, or citizens have the right for freedom of the press. Supreme Court, in nutshell, has supported the freedom of the press and the right to dissent. There's no doubt about it. Too many judgments from the Supreme Court. That I won't say about the High Courts, functioning of the High Court. And High Courts, lower courts, of course, everybody knows which judge is friendly to which other officers are the local businessmen. The reputations are on the field, I'm sorry, are not very conducive for the health of the judiciary at lower level. I won't like to, that's a separate question. I'm sure you are more aware of those problems. But at the Supreme Court level, the rights, by and large, they've supported the Election Commission till recently. They supported freedom of the press and the right to dissent on crucial questions. Their record is very. So that's why I'm always for the freedom of the judiciary. But judiciary ultimately is also accountable to the people. So in case the judicial judgments are meant for only for sectoral lobbies in the government or outside the government, Supreme Court will lose its authority among the people. And ultimately sanction of using any institution, parliament, judiciary, executive, comes from the people. If you don't have support of the people, you will not be able to, judiciary will not be able to face the dictate of parliament, which can make the law, or dictate of the executive, which can get into league with parliament wishes. So these two institutions, if join hand, Supreme Court will suffer in that case. So again, you will have to go to the people. So when Justice Khanna, when he resigned, the people were with him. The rest of the bar was with him. Country was with him. Single man dissented, resigned, and he was still remembered. So he stood up for the rule of law with conscience. And I'm sure if the rule of law is weakened and judiciary is not able to weak enough to protect it, its erosion, that means you are eroding democratic rights or constitutional rights or the Constitution of India. Institutions like Parliament and Executive and others who have got in the way of this right, exercise of these rights, they will definitely suffer. Themselves they will suffer. The perpetrators of those who erode the Constitution and the rule of law and the rights of the people, they themselves will suffer a great deal. So watchdog has to be really watching every move of the executive and parliament or any other sectional interest, whether it's a corporate interest or non-corporate interest or mob is there. They must stand for the people, for strength. The strength will come from if you stand up for the people and people's right. And not only the rich and the powerful lobbies or the trade unions. As Gandhiji said, that ultimate test, litmus test of a policy decision, that applies to decisions of the Supreme Court, unless it wipes the tears of the lowliest and the last poor man of the country, That is not valid otherwise. So if the court thinks, when they take major decisions, economic, political, or otherwise, unless you think of to wipe the tears of the last and the lowliest person of the land, it's not a valid decision. Thank you very much.
We also recognize the presence of Mr. Rajiv Datta, Senior Advocate, and Mr. Darshananand Gaur. Please come here, there is a seat here. He's our Joint General Secretary of the Bar Association of India. Thank you, Mr. Dua, for your very, very inspiring address. You have please. You have very rightly pointed out that the signs are worrying and democracy is weakened. The health of the three institutions, and you also added, and if I may also add, the media, the press. So that make it the four institutions. It's very important for the survival of any democracy in the world and also strengthening of the rule of law. Your reference to emergency was really very, very relevant. It was like taking us back into history so that one should know what lessons one can learn and apply the same principles so that we can avoid those situations which had occurred at that point of time. It resulted in virtual autocracy of one institution to the overall effect of damaging and destroying the other institutions. Like even the Supreme Court was virtually subjugated at that point of time. But media by and large also was controlled with a few exceptions which Mr. Dua rightly pointed out. So that taking us back into history of 1975-76 is very relevant for us to consider the apprehensions, the fears, the worrying signs you see, as Mr. Dua has rightly put, so that that type of situation does not emerge again. And for that, it is very vital that there should be strengthening of the institutions, that is the executive, the parliament, and the judiciary. Executive and legislature can take care of themselves, but we as legal professionals are more concerned, you see, with the strengthening of the judiciary. That is why this particular convention has focused on judicial reforms. So one cannot risk, you see, that there should be any dilution in the functioning of the judiciary, whether due to external factors or due to the internal inadequacies, if some of the judges they feel it is. Therefore, it is high time that we consider ways and means to strengthen the institution of judiciary, because eventually, as they say, judiciary is the supreme body, even over the executive and the parliament, because the right to interpret laws and the right to have those decisions enforced, you see, rests with the Supreme Court of India. There's a big responsibility on the judiciary, and that Mr. Dua has very, very rightly pointed out, and we are very grateful to you, sir, for your very, very illuminating, educative, and informative address to us.
Thank you.
I can see the presence of Mr. Shyam Devan there. Would you please come this side? Yeah. Mr. Shyam Devan is a very eminent lawyer of the country. These days you must have been reading his, in the newspapers about the arguments you see in the Aadhaar matter. He's also Aadhaar for all of us, you see, virtually.